Fingers crossed. Okay, so now we are officially live. If you're on your computers or your laptop or your phone, you should be able to see. Um, uh, I'm messaging Meryl right now, so I'll put that in the chat so we can basically we are live. Okay. One. I'm just sending some messages out if we want to start with introductions and everything. So Ken, I'll just
And we don't have a specific topic tonight. We'll just
I just thought we'd you could ask us just any questions that we're facing anything. Really nothing specific in general. Sorry.
okay, that's fine.
Oh, Meryl's here.
Now, is there a place to see who's on the call?
So over here in the chat, you'll see there's a section over here where there's the chat. So if we do encourage people to leave comments, let us know where you're watching from, let us know that you're there. It will also thank you, Meryl. So yeah, I'm trying to let everybody know that we're live. Just had some difficulties there getting it up and running. And so you can also check to see find the actual live event itself. The event itself. You can also check to see kind of who's in the chat basically. So
there we go. And where is that? I'm sorry, Ready?
If you're on your laptop or if you're on your phone, you can join the event there itself. So
oh, so aren't we on the event? Isn't that what we're in?
We are in the back. We are in what's called the studio. So, and John's already asked us, and then I've also got the chat popped up. You'll see over here on this, there's like a little menu on the side. You'll see the chat is at the bottom, and you should be able to see that there as well.
Okay.
It'll be to the right hand side of you.
Yeah.
And so, did you see, Alan, when I popped it up? Thanks, guys, so I do see on the. I'm actually on my phone looking at the event itself, so just as if I was a viewer of that event, just to kind of sometimes I'll answer questions or just say hi to people from there as well. So.
Okay.
All right. And I see John has a couple of questions for us right off the bat. John, if you could just clarify that first one, and then we'll get to our introductions, and we could start with that. You said, what would you all practically get jobs? Do you mean what would you all do, or what would be our approach? I'm not sure what you're asking in that question. All right. Melanie, you want us to get going?
Yeah, we are ready to get going.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's our first time on Restream, and we're figuring it all out. And actually, Melanie's figuring it out. She's our tech guru. So thank you for doing that, Melanie. We are going to be also doing this every other week is our initial plan. See how it goes. So with that, why don't we get started? And I guess I'm not going to ask a specific question, but I'll ask each panel member, so to speak, to give an introduction, tell a little about yourself, and what's the hot topic you've been dealing with lately, or a big tip that you feel people need to know today, May 27th. So Charlotte, how about we start with you? Charlotte, are you on mute?
Thank you. I sure was on mute. I'm Charlotte Taylor, a career coach and resume writer based in Central Florida. And I love helping people find meaningful work with the compensation and the work-life balance, if there is such a thing, that they deserve. And so I've been kind of thinking about the top challenges every job seeker faces and how to conquer them in this crazy job market. Um, and I guess my top tip would be one mistake that everyone makes is treating online job applications like a numbers game, and you fire off hundreds of generic applications and hope that something sticks. But a better approach is to recognize that 75% of applications get screened out by ATS systems. That's just a fact. Even though there is a person on the other end who can look into the digital filing cabinet and pull out other resumes, it still feels like it's going into a black hole. So, you need to apply directly on company websites whenever possible. But don't let online applications be your only job search strategy. You can network your way into some wonderful opportunities. And when you do open those conversations with people, follow up strategically with a polite email. After a week, maybe two, send a second one, and then move on. So your time is better spent on finding people to connect with and building those relationships than it is applying online. So it's a matter of quality of your application and building those relationships. It's not an either or, it's a both and.
Great opening tip. Thank you, Charlotte. And I think you made two great points. One is, yeah, you can get a job by applying online, but you should be spending the least amount of time there and the most amount of time in other parts of your job search, networking in particular. But I think that's a great tip. Sometimes I think people feel good about applying, feel like, well, I'm doing something, but it's probably not the best use of time. Thanks for that, Charlotte. And Alan, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Alan Kirshner. I'm a career coach. I help people with interview prep, job search strategies, LinkedIn optimization, salary negotiation. And I would say, just based on two of my clients just landed last week, and in both of those cases, that it was through networking. One of the clients, somebody reached out to them, somebody they knew from their previous employer, knew that they were really a great candidate. And so they didn't even have to apply to something. The hiring organization found them, and that started the process of the interviewing, and finally they got the offer. The second one was also previous manager for the person who got the opportunity, and she was working in another organization, a different company than where they had worked together, and he had been in contact with her, and she had set things in motion for him, getting his name out there for the people in her organization. So that's, we always, as coaches, we always talk a lot about how networking is so important, and those are just two prime examples of people that use networking to their benefit, and that I think is really a key thing to being effective and efficient with your job search.
Great, excellent, Alan. And I also like what came out of that for me is, calling on former colleagues. I mean, people who have landed elsewhere. They're working, they're at another company. You never know, check in with them, see how they're doing, what's up with them. Maybe there will be opportunities there. But I think in the case of networking, it's really not about asking for a job. So don't get caught up in doing that, because that's kind of tough. People can shut you down or maybe not want to help you if that's what you do. But you're checking in, seeing what's going on, getting advice, offering help if it's appropriate. And those conversations lead to someone saying, I should talk to someone. Or maybe a month later, you see something. It's really not about asking for a job. So don't get caught up in doing that, because that's. Can somebody on speakerphone or something? Down, or maybe not want to help you if that's what you do. But you're checking in, seeing what's going on, getting advice, offering help if it's appropriate.
And those conversations lead to someone saying, you know, I had that question. Or in one place, I'm not asking for a job, so I'm getting caught up in doing that because that's somebody comes to your phone, shut it down. That's what you do.
Now, can people hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, because I just heard my whole thing come back to me.
Yes, same. I heard that as well.
I don't know what that was all about. But anyway, that's a good point, Al. Thank you. And Melanie said she's having technical problems, but we're still alive, so let's keep going then. And I should introduce myself. I'm Ken Scher. I too am a career coach and an executive coach. And I think that, you know, when you guys were talking about, Charlotte, you're talking about online, posting online, Alan, you're talking about networking. Charlotte, when you were talking, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie Dumb and Dumber, but there's one scene where this guy wants a date with this woman, and he says, "Is there a chance?" She said, "There's 1 in a million chance." And he says, "So you're saying there's a chance?" And that's what I feel about with online applications. That yeah, there is a chance, probably better than 1 in a million, but not as good a chance as you'll get through networking. So, Alan, let me start with you then, since it's about networking. How do you, if you identify, well, first of all, where should you be fishing for networking connections? And then how do you broach the topic of having a conversation or connecting with someone to ultimately get to where do you have a good conversation with them?
A lot of people don't feel comfortable with networking. So I say start networking with people that you know and know you and build up momentum that way. Ideally, what you want to do is create a target list of companies and organizations that you're interested in, and then start by following the company or the organization on LinkedIn, and then see who else is out there who works for that company that might be somebody that would be helpful for you to talk to, and see if they post content on LinkedIn. If they do, then you can start following them and also commenting on some of their posts. That's a way of making a connection. You can also, you know, reach out to them, say, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I'm, you know, very impressed by it. I'm interested in the company and I'm growing my network. I'd like to connect with you. So that's a way of doing it too. So you have to build up some rapport and relationship without, you know, just coming right out and asking. Like I had somebody last week that reached out to me and said, you know, I want to become a career coach. Can you tell me how to do that? I never met the person before. We didn't have any kind of relationship, right? So there's no rapport at that point. So that type of ask isn't going to necessarily be effective. So you have to build up rapport before you start making asks. And, you know, when you build up that rapport, then you can get to the point of asking to do, you know, an informational chat. So I think that would be a strategy to go forward with.
Good, excellent. And Charlotte, coming back to you, and I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, and feel free to add to Alan's comments on networking, of course. But there's so much uncertainty in the market today. You know, the tariffs certainly have shaken things up. People, I think, are having, although the employment numbers are very good, people are struggling, I think, to find jobs. And I don't know if you're experiencing that with your clients. What do you see as their biggest challenge? Is there something that comes up that is consistent?
Yeah, it is a wild and crazy job market like nothing I have ever seen in almost 30 years of being a career coach. You know, I just had a client who went for 9 interviews. And then she got a rejection email. They didn't even have the courtesy to call her. I mean,
Wow.
after the 7th interview, they told her she was in the top 3. And then, you know, she didn't hear back. So she sent an email saying, you know, how are you doing in the decision making process? And they said, you know, well, it'll probably be another week before you hear. So that kind of made her feel a little uneasy. and and then she just got this cold rejection email, and it was just devastating to her. And what we kind of figured out was that it was age discrimination. She was interviewing for a position to replace um, a manager, senior manager who was retiring, and she happened to be within a year of that person's age. Um, she has stellar credentials, did everything right in interviews, sent follow-up thank you notes, and still it didn't happen. And, so I was doing a little bit of research on age discrimination to, see, about the prevalence of age discrimination, over the last 5 years. And it's down a little bit. It was up to about 20%. Now it's down to about 9%, according to the research studies that I read on AARP and Axios and LinkedIn. But I think that's a major challenge, especially when the job, and I've seen it on the other end too, when the job description is an entry-level job, but they want 5 years of experience. I mean, after 5 years of experience, I don't think you're an entry-level person anymore. So that's one of the frustrations that I'm seeing.
Can I ask you, Charlotte, if I can, is there something, not to blame your client, because it clearly is not her fault at all, but if there was something you would suggest that maybe she could do the next time to maybe prevent age discrimination, or at least give the interviewers something to think about, is there anything you would suggest to her?
I know this person very well. She's a lifelong friend. I suggested to her that she color her hair. And, go someplace before the interview and have, her hair and makeup done. Maybe to, I don't know, if she had like a Mary Kay Cosmetics person or, someone to help her, with her corporate image. I thought her clothing was appropriate. She's very articulate. I had coached her on all the questions and how to answer them. So it's just, a matter of being energetic. I think maybe one of the other things that hurt her is she'd been in business for quite a while on her own and hadn't been in a corporate environment probably in about 8 years. And, and this was a, kind of an operational leader position that required a lot of corporate experience. So that may have been one thing. Another thing that caused her not to do as well as we had hoped. But I mean, I think it's ridiculous. I think the system's broken if you have to go through more than 3 or 4 interviews. They need to make a decision at that point. Don't you agree?
I totally agree. That is really ridiculous. 9 interviews. I mean, they should be able to make up their mind sooner than that. But one other question then for you, Charlotte. Would you ever recommend to somebody to be proactive, somebody of a certain age, let's say it's 60 to 65, whatever, an older candidate, to say, if I were in your shoes, or, you may think that I'm too old, like just be aggressive, be right out on it. Let me tell you why my age is actually my strength, and then go into, all the benefits.
Yeah, I'd start there. I'd start with the value that you bring. I wouldn't bring up the word age at all, because you don't want to plant that in somebody's mind that you might be too old. But, the fact that, you've survived 3 economic downturns, and have the skills to, scale operations back up, or whatever your strength is, you could say something like, having navigated 3 economic downturns, I've developed, some strategies for maintaining team morale, during times of uncertainty. And, that's what makes me, a great frontline manager, or something like that.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I love that. That's a great, I love that phrase, having navigated 3 economic downturns, and, letting them know the challenges you faced, and Are you still standing? That's a really great suggestion.
Yeah, that one comes from a Marie Zimenoff. It's not my own, but through one of the coaching classes that I took from her, because there's having to, it's hitting earlier and earlier. I think, I think the research said that 61% of workers over 45 have experienced age discrimination. And,
Yeah.
And it's hitting younger now. I've heard from clients, in digital marketing, especially where they're trying to appeal to those younger buyers. This person's career was over at the age of 40 because they didn't think he related to, people who would buy that particular product or go to that particular music concert because of his age. So that's a real thing that everybody needs to kind of think about. And it hits on the younger side too. If they say, oh, you look too young to be able to, to do this. So whatever they're saying to you, too old, too young, overqualified, underqualified, it hits at both ends of the spectrum. So you've got to be proactive about how you're going to sell yourself in that tell me about yourself question, so that they know that you are the value that you bring, and you just keep leading with that value.
I think that's the key takeaway. Keep leading with value. That's a great point. Now, Alan, sometimes people can run into interviewers. I mean, it always amazes me that as important as it is to hire the right people, as expensive as it is to recruit, that companies don't train people on how to interview. So we've either experienced it ourselves or our clients have experienced that interviewer who does all the talking. They talk about themselves, they do all their talking, and then the client walks out saying, I never got a chance to answer any questions. They never asked me any questions. What would you suggest candidates be prepared? I mean, you got to be prepared just in case. How do they be prepared? How do you address that kind of situation?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I mean, you need to demonstrate why you're the best candidate, and if you're not getting the opportunity to speak, then it's definitely challenging. So you need to try to, discuss with them, start commenting on some of the things they're saying, or say, can I interrupt you for a second? It's a challenge for sure, but you need to be able to talk about why you're the person. So I think it's important to, if you need to be polite and try to, mention to them, thanks for telling me that. Let me give you an example of something. So whenever, there's a certain pause, I think you have to kind of jump in there and try to, make your points. But to your point, Ken, people don't get a lot of training to be about how to interview. So a lot of interviewers are not great or okay, not that many are really good at it because it's something that they haven't been taught, and it's not necessarily something that's innate. So I think it behooves companies to give some training for people that are going to be doing a lot of interviewing of candidates, but you have to play the hand that you're dealt, basically. So however you can get your points in as much as you can, that's the best that you can do, and it's not necessarily easy.
Yeah, no, I think that's good advice. So, you got to look for a pause and then jump in when you can. Sometimes you might even get to a point where, you just have to talk over and say, oh, excuse me, let me, that reminds me of something I wanted to make sure that you knew about me. And then you could give one of your star stories, or you could just, make the point you want to make. I also think you need to go into interviews prepared for anything. You got to be prepared, obviously, to answer questions. And then you got to be prepared. Sometimes I know some clients have been surprised when there's a panel instead of just one-on-one interviewing. And then sometimes you get these interviewers that dominate the conversation and don't give you a chance to talk about yourself, which is how you're going to get hired. So you just have to be prepared for all these things and be ready to go whatever direction the interview takes you. And Melanie, you're back, correct?
Yes, I am back. Hopefully you all can hear me.
Yes,
So,
we can.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that
we can hear you.
props to Restream's help desk, which responds on the spot. So,
All right, great, excellent. Well, we're glad, and thanks for battling through that for all of us. We appreciate
no,
it.
that's. I mean, I was like, you know what, you guys are good. Everyone can hear you. Just keep going, and I'm all good.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Now, Melanie, let me ask you. First of all, are you still in touch with your recruiter friends? I
yeah,
mean,
I mean, I speak to my recruiter friends pretty much on a weekly basis. I actually just had a recruiter. One of the last recruiters I ever hired, she actually did me a favor and did a mock interview for a client of mine that has been struggling. I pretty much suspected that it was more of a mindset thing than which was a big thing of like how it was coming through, and even how he did mock interviews with me, there were some big red flags. But I really this particular client has definitely been a challenge, so to speak, in terms of overcoming the mindset. And I even had a client today that was like, I had like 3 or 4 interviews and, didn't get anything back. And yes, I mean, there's a lot of things broken with the system. We know that, but here's the reality is we're not fixing them tomorrow. I mean, we're not fixing them like that's a process, and that's a company process. And so it's not on the candidate to fix the process. Like that's a whole other battle. So, and it's not to dismiss it, but we have to control the things that what can we do about it? And so, but yeah, to your question, because that's a whole other that's a whole other topic. But yeah, I mean, I talk to my recruiter friends consistently because I'm always trying to keep a kind of a thumb on what's happening, what are they experiencing, what are they seeing, what are their recommendations, and getting insights from them.
So Melanie, so what's happening? What do they see? What are you hearing from the front lines? I mean, I think all of us get at an idea, and we've hear it from our clients, and we could put the two and two together and get it. But what are you hearing from the people up front?
There's a lot of push and pull right now with hiring right now. I think that we've seen a lot of the numbers have been probably what people have felt like aren't really representative. Technically, the employment numbers for the last 2 months have actually been on the positive. But what you have to remember is those are indicative of what was in place happening about 90 or 120 days ago. So that was into the end of 2024. So when you're probably seeing right now, probably what you're seeing right now is a lot more of what we're starting to see the effects of what's happened with, in particular, the United States with the government, the comings and goings of the government positions. And so that's the other thing of that is that we're seeing that we're starting to see a lot of companies pulling back, and they need to hire. They have openings. It's 100%. Those are true. A lot of open positions out there, but they're also scared to invest because we're seeing a lot of layoffs still. So we're seeing a little mix of everything happening, which what happens with that is that nothing comes from that. Just like when you make I'll use a baking analogy, for example. When you bake a cake, it's a science. And employment's not a science by any stretch of the imagination, because otherwise none of us would be here. Everybody would have a job. We would have this exact same process for everyone to follow. But baking is a science. You have to be exact. And that's kind of like with some of the hiring processes is that they're getting told, hey, this is happening, or these people are being let go. So it's causing a lot of mix, and they're getting, requisitions, but then being told, no, we're not going to hire. Oh, wait, we are going to hire. And so it's a lot of push and pull, which I think is what candidates are seeing right now as well.
Yeah, it's it is interesting. The news doesn't always seem to line up with what a lot of us see as reality. But that is interesting. Melanie, I'm going to go back to you and then back to Alan and over to Charlotte again. So Melanie, you mentioned that client that you had do the mock interview was having problems with mindset. Can people fake it? And if not, like, why is that a problem? How does that come across in an interview?
So,
and what do you do about it?
yeah, I mean, I will say this particular client, I've given some very tough love to, and some days I am not sure he is appreciated. Today we had a little bit of more of a kind of more of a positive conversation because he likes to kind of go off on recruiters and how bad recruiters are and oh this happened, and I finally just said, hey, what do you want me to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? Like there is like we could talk about this all day long, but that is not going to help you land your job. It's just simply not. So we've got two choices here. And I had another conversation with a client who, you know, probably he openly admitted his attitude towards the whole process has probably come through in the interview, and that's why he didn't land a couple of the positions he interviewed for recently. And honestly, I shared my story, and I shared my story of like, hey, I don't spout this advice because it's fluff or, some book told me. The job searching advice I give comes from having been unemployed, having no money as a single mom, I wasn't going to be a coach. Like being a coach wasn't my game plan. Being in corporate recruiting was my game plan. My coaching business didn't start off, and I even said this to one of the clients today, it didn't start off out of this like good for others. It started because I needed money. And I didn't start off as a coach. I just was doing resumes. My mindset was broken during that. And it's only because I had two coaches that said, you know what you're doing, your experience is still with you. So for all those people that are going through that, but it's how you're showing up. And I've been on the other side of the table where I've literally said to myself, that person's going through something, or wow, there's something happening here. Like you sense it and you feel it. And the reality is it's not what people are attracted to when they are in the hiring, because one, they're not looking to fix problems as much as they may want to give that person the chance and the job. They need to know that that person is going to come equipped and ready to go. And we've got to show up as that person. So do I believe in faking it till you make it? Yes and no, because I think that one of the things I had to do that. I had to show up as this positive, happy person, despite what was happening in my life in private. And for that hour or 2 hours of my time, whatever it was, I had to leave that at the door. None of that mattered in that moment. I had to show up as the strong recruiter with 20 years of experience that can actually lead a team, that can make sure your hires are done quickly. I had to show up as that person. And so where my mindset, I'm not a mindset coach, but I do believe heavily our mindset impacts and our attitudes impact how we show up for interviews. Whether you believe it or not, I will say I've been the person on the other side of the table. I was the person who wasn't showing up. So I'll get off. But I think we can give you all the tips in the world, but honestly, it's the confidence piece. Confidence is sexy. People love confidence.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think we've all been there too, in terms of, downing ourselves or imposter syndrome and things like that. And it's hard. I mean, you're right, Melanie. We can tell people that it comes through, and it does, but it's up to each person to figure out how are they going to get that back. Now, Alan, how do you help people rebuild their confidence? Getting laid off is not a great feeling. It could beat people down. What suggestions do you have to people to get their confidence back and get their head in the right place?
Yeah, it's really a critical thing to being successful in the job search. You need to be positive, just like Melanie said. So, we go through periods of self-doubt or imposter syndrome. But the thing is that you build confidence by doing things. So part of what I think is people get overwhelmed with the whole job search, and they think that it's a failure if I don't have the job offer. But I like to chunk it down into smaller steps and set goals for yourself on a daily and a weekly basis. And then as you hit those, start looking back and feeling good about those. If you don't hit some of them, then think about why that occurred, and set those goals for the next day. So I think it's important to chunk it down a little bit too, but also to think about not just the fact that you're looking for employment, or you were laid off or restructured or whatever terminology the company says it, but think about the skills that you have. You don't lose those skills just because you're not working at that organization or that company. So think about, I think it's really helpful to write down the skills that you have, that are transferable, that you can use and will be valuable to the next organization. And I also like to have people write down a list of accomplishments, things that they've done in their past roles, that they can use as examples to put down on your resume, your LinkedIn profile, and especially when you interview. So I think part of getting to that more positive mindset is to think about successes in the past, and also look at smaller short-term successes that you're having currently. And I like to use the analogy, job search is like a roller coaster. They're going to be ups and downs. So the key is not to stay in the downs for too long, but to work through those and then get to another point. And it's really important that you come across as confident and positive. So you have to convince yourself of that first before you're going to be able to do that to somebody else. So I think thinking about and not dwelling on the negative situation that you're in, or things that have happened that are negative, try to dwell on some of the things that happened in your career that were positive. And so I think that can go a long way toward helping you get to the right mindset.
Yeah, I agree. Some good points there, Alan. Thank you for that. Yeah, and I think reading your resume and reminding yourself of your accomplishments. I think that and also, like you said, Alan, celebrating the small successes. And I guess I'd add to your answer too: don't stay in your office. Don't stay alone. Isolation is the enemy of the unemployed. So get out with people, even if it's other people looking for a job. That's good. It's accountability. You can motivate each other, inspire each other. But sitting at home alone, if you're feeling negative, I find can only make you more negative. So Charlotte, coming back around to you then, let me see, where am I going to go from here? You and I, we were talking about ageism before, so we don't need to talk about that again. Talk about interviewing. Let me see.
I had something I wanted to add about what Melanie was saying as far as mindset. I think a lot of us fall into this comparison trap where we think everyone else seems to have it all figured out. You need to recognize that there are no overnight success stories. It took years of invisible work behind the scenes and probably several failures that you never hear about. So, I would say to you, be careful about the social media that you consume during your job search when you're most vulnerable to comparison. Focus on your own progress and celebrate the small wins. I had a mentor that told me, you are only in competition with yourself to perform better than you did the previous time. Apply that to your interviews. If you're making progress, that builds your confidence. And, everyone is kind of making up this whole interview thing as they go along. We've mentioned before that interviewers don't necessarily have the proper training. So look for ways to connect on a personal level. And, just know that right now in this market, job search is a marathon. It's taking just a little bit longer for people to get hired. According to the last jobs report, it's like 23 weeks. For my clients, I'm seeing, between 12 and 14 weeks is kind of a sweet spot if they're doing all the things that they should be doing proactively to move their job search along. But I'd say, if you're comparing yourself to other people, stop.
That is great advice, Charlotte. People say, "Oh, how come they got hired? Oh, they look so easy for them, or they're so confident." And everybody's has their own struggles that we're all fighting. I am gonna ask you a question though, Charlotte, too. So I think that today, when you're out of work, arguably it could be seen as an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reset yourself, to maybe start a new career. How do you get that confidence, or how do you present yourself as the appropriate choice if you don't have the experience that in that particular field or a particular role?
Yeah, you really have to connect the dots between transferable skills in that case. And oh, you don't want to say, well, I've never done that. You want to say, in my previous role, and then tell them what you did do. Gosh, I'm losing my train of thought here, but there's a way to. You don't want to say, I've never done that before in an interview. You want to draw a comparison between transferable skills that you have done. So in your last job, I did this, and how it would apply to this next job. And
I think that's great. I think it goes back to what you had said earlier too about value, right? Showing the value that you bring, how it relates to the job at hand. I think you nailed it, Charlotte. You didn't lose it at all.
Yeah. Based on my expanded responsibilities and contributions, in your last role, that's what you want to, indicate that you're coachable. If you're a younger employee, I had a prompt response that I usually do when I'm coaching people, and I can't think of it off the top of my head right now.
Okay. All right. But you've done good anyway. So thank you for that. We're actually at 6:56 already. I know we got off to a slow start, but I think maybe we will start to wrap this up. And so with that, Alan, how about if you start, you can give a final tip and then let people know how they can get in touch with you.
Yeah, just piggybacking on what we were talking about as far as mindset goes, it's really important. So think about the fact that you are going to land a job. It's hard to predict when or how it's going to happen, but everybody's going to land a job. So be encouraged, be positive about that. The setbacks are just going to be temporary, but you really need to work hard, have a plan, use your time efficiently, and stay focused. And again, like I was saying before, it's really like a roller coaster. There are going to be ups and downs, but try not to stay in those downs for too long. It's natural. You're going to be having things that don't work the way you would hope they would, or, things that just don't go great. So, realize that, every day is a fresh day, a fresh start, and keep and stay the course, and you are going to land. And I'm seeing that with my clients as well, too. It's not necessarily that it's as quick or the way that you expect it's going to happen, but if you stay true to the process, it's going to happen. And the best way to get in touch with me would be through LinkedIn. You can send me a note that we met through the LinkedIn Live. Would love to connect with you. And if there's anything I can do to help, would love to do that as well. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Alan. And great contributions as always. Appreciate that. Melanie, how about you?
So Jeff just joined us a little better late than never, Jeff. So thank you. And he had a question about applying through LinkedIn. So I'm just going to use that as my tip. So I think that applying without the follow-up to getting in touch with somebody, if you can apply on the website, I encourage website applying over LinkedIn applying. If it's a easy apply, I actually tell my clients, go ahead and do the easy apply, but go over to the website and apply there as well, because it lands in two different spaces. So I think that you have to have, and to John's had a kind of a follow-up question, I think that, besides having your materials, your resume, your LinkedIn profile, which should be consistently updated, LinkedIn profiles are not set it and forget about it. So if you haven't touched it in 6 months and you're finding that you're struggling, now's a good time to go through and edit that. But I would also tell you too to have you have to have a strategic networking plan in place. Who are you contacting? What are the companies you're reaching out to? What types of positions are you specifically looking for? Those, you need to be very specific, but you also need to be identifying those exact same, the who, the where, the what. You need to have that as part of your networking plan. Without a strategic networking plan in this particular market, it's, I would say, it's not near to impossible, because we are still seeing people land jobs, but it is going to be much more difficult. And you want to start building those relationships. It's never too late to build those relationships. So definitely feel free to connect with me, and let us know too if you've seen this on the replay or live. And sorry for all the glitches today. I always get frustrated with that, but glad we were able to run this today, and I think we'll be able to, smooth that out for the future. And then, of course, check me out on LinkedIn. Rocking LinkedIn is our new name, no longer LinkedIn Rockstar. But we've got a new format, and I do have a masterclass with Shel Shapiro coming up in June for LinkedIn specifically. So that is a paid masterclass, but if you're interested in it, please let me know. I will get you the details.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. And great contributions as always, not only tonight, not only with your coaching advice, but with the technology. So thank you very much again for that. And Charla, how about you?
Yeah, I've been working with several federal employees that um, have been laid off, and they're trying to reinvent themselves and to do a career pivot into the corporate world. And I've found some really cool websites that take the ranking, like GS13 or whatever it is, and will tell you what that job description should be in the corporate world. So if you're a federal employee that's transitioning into corporate, you want to put your official title first, and then in parentheses, you want to put the corporate equivalent of what that job is. And then you also want to bear in mind that on a federal resume, it's wordy. I mean, it takes 2 paragraphs to tell them you changed the light bulb. You know, you've got to cut it down to the bare minimum. And so I think that's something that you have to think about, the differences between how you don't want to tell all your job duties like you do in a federal resume. You want to cut to the chase and tell how you made a difference. And that's true for anybody, whether you're in a federal, doing a federal to corporate transition or not. And then, the other thing is, I'm also working with people right now who haven't completed their college degrees. And one of my clients was leading with apologies about what they lacked instead of showcasing the value that they bring. And so I went back and looked at the interview notes that we were working on. And, you know, they've gotten certification through Google Analytics or stuff like that for the marketing role that they were pursuing, and they had completed, up to their junior year of a liberal arts degree. So our strategy was for them to become the go-to expert in something specific and valuable to that particular role that they were applying for, and to lead with the accomplishments in every interaction. Like, I increased sales by 30% in my first year by implementing a new customer follow-up system. And then they also, we talked about having referrals. When someone can vouch for your abilities personally, the degree requirements become surprisingly flexible. Unless the job posting says bachelor degree required, most of them now will say bachelor's degree or equivalent experience in, or even give the number of years. of experience. But when you can have someone who is a referral, vouch for your abilities, that goes a long way. So I hope that those tips helped. I do have a comprehensive job search coaching program that I'm using with these federal employees to walk them through the whole job search process. It's not limited to federal employees. That's just the cohort that I have going right now. But if you'd like more information on that, you can find it on my website, writtenbyapro.com. And as far as technical glitches, I was not able to type in the chat or even see the chat. So I wasn't much help, Melanie, in helping you to monitor the chat tonight. So maybe we can figure out what's going on with that.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
we can
thank you,
definitely. We'll get all of those things squared away. Just happy to be back, be live, and we'll get all of that stuff taken care of. So.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, great. And thank you to the whole panel and just everybody. I'm Ken Schur. Like I say, I'm a career coach and executive coach too. And I think the mental part of the job search can be the toughest. I've been there. I was 52 when I was laid off, and it was hard for me. It hurt my confidence, hurt my self-esteem. It hurt a lot. So make sure you work on your head, get it straight. Be around people who are positive and encouraging. If you need to, find yourself a coach who can motivate you and inspire you and remind you of how great you are, because you are. We all have something to offer. It's just a matter of being able to identify it and then verbalize it in the appropriate way. You can find me too on LinkedIn. Love to connect with you there, or reach out to me directly at ken@surecoaching.com. We will be back in 2 weeks to do this again, and I look forward to that. So until then, though, everybody please be well, take care, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Good night, everybody.